Last night, my wife Jane went out and didn't return until this morning. I am absolutely furious about it, but at the same time, I feel deeply depressed. I know what needs to be done, but it is tearing me apart inside that I have to go through with it. The pain is raw and unbearable. It was a typical night for her to go out with her girlfriends, so I wasn't worried when she didn't come home at her usual 2 a.m. time. But around 2:30, I decided to give her a call just to check in. She answered the phone and I could hear voices in the background. She explained they had gone to a party but were planning on leaving soon. At 3 in the morning, Jane still wasn't home, so I sent her a text. It showed as delivered, but she didn't reply. An hour later, I called again. The phone rang a few times before she redirected me to voicemail. This morning, my wife burst through the front door after 7 a.m. in a disheveled state. I was anxiously waiting for her arrival. She was wearing a dress that she didn't leave the house in and mesh leggings that I had never seen before. The leggings were torn and her makeup was smudged as if she had been through some kind of struggle. My heart dropped when I saw her. My first thought was that something terrible had happened to my wife. She shook her head in response to my question, reassuring me that she hadn't been assaulted. But when I asked what she had been up to instead, she said I already knew the answer. In an instant, the voice in my mind that had been nagging at me since the previous night was confirmed. My wife had cheated on me. When I asked her who it was, she replied with a casual shrug and mentioned that it was someone they met at the club. She had gone back to his house and hooked up with him before taking an Uber ride back home. She said that she didn't want to argue and simply wanted to sleep, and that's exactly what she did. She didn't even bother to take a shower before collapsing into bed. At this point, I know our relationship is done for. We don't have any children, and since we rent instead of owning a home, the separation process shouldn't be too difficult. Cheating is the ultimate deal breaker for me, so yeah. Basically, my marriage with Jane is done. I must have gone through all the stages of grief as Jane slept. She was still asleep at midday, but by that time I had processed some of my thoughts and came up with a tentative plan that I was starting to put into action. I wrote down a few questions that I wanted answers to, gathered all my essential papers, laptop, and other items. After that, I went into the bedroom and began packing my suitcase. Some people might suggest kicking Jane out, and I did think about it, but decided instead that I would be the one to leave. Besides, I wasn't too attached to this place anyway. The apartment is only a rental, and I'm fortunate enough to say that continuing to pay for half of the rent until the lease ends won't bankrupt me. It'll still be a burden to shoulder, but I know I can manage it. Plus, being in this place will only bring back memories of Jane, so I need to focus on moving forward instead of dwelling on the past. Jane woke up as I was halfway finished packing my suitcase. She seemed disoriented at first, but then she began to cry. As much as it may make me seem heartless, I didn't try to comfort her. I calmly mentioned that I had screenshots of her Uber receipt and text messages from her phone, and with her confession that morning, our relationship was over. She didn't respond, only crying even louder. I thought about trying to continue the conversation, but instead I opted to finish packing my suitcase and wait in the living room for her. She didn't come out from the bedroom for quite a while, and when she finally did, she came over to sit beside me on the couch. She asked if we could talk things out. I tried to remain composed as I explained that the conversation wouldn't go the way she wanted. I was going to ask some questions and she was going to answer honestly. Jane promised to be truthful, so I continued. My voice shook throughout and it took all my strength to keep it together, but I kept going. I asked, "Was this the first time you cheated?" Tears streamed down her face before she even responded, and then she said no. She admitted to cheating on me multiple times during our marriage. I will quote her directly here. "It was just sex, a way for me to let off steam. None of it ever meant anything. I used to think that the love I had for Jane was so strong it could never disappear, but it did. In that instant, my love for her evaporated. It dawned on me that I wasn't facing my wife. The woman I had married was gone. This was a different person entirely. She wouldn't tell me the exact number of times she had been unfaithful, just that it was more than just last night." "Did you use protection?" Without any hesitation, she nodded her head. She seemed surprised that I had even asked the question. Despite her reassurances, I still planned on getting tested to be extra cautious. "Are you friends cheating on their partners too?" Jane answered yes and no. I tried to persuade her to give me the names of her friends who were being unfaithful. I fully intended to rat them out. Jane should have told me. Instead, her refusal resulted in me reaching out to almost every husband and boyfriend that I could locate on social media. There were a couple that I couldn't find or didn't know, but I did my best to fulfill my task. Why did you do it? This was the answer that gutted me the most. She said she needed sexual variety. I told her that it's not like our sex life is dull. She clarified, it's not the same as something new. I couldn't even come up with a reply to that. I had prepared myself for criticism about my workaholic tendencies or lack of emotional support, but instead she simply slept with other men because she felt like it and wanted to have a good time. After I didn't reply, she brought up the idea of seeking counseling and therapy. I told her there would be none of that and reminded her that our relationship was over and I would be leaving. Instead of breaking down in tears and begging me to change my mind like I expected, she instead did something that truly disgusted me. Jane tried to fuck me. She attempted to seduce me, touching me and trying to undress me to have sex. I felt sick to my stomach and roughly pushed her off me. She assured me over and over again that she would find a solution and we would solve the problem together. But I couldn't see a way out, and I told her as much. She started crying again and ran to the bathroom and locked the door behind her. I'd had enough by that point, so I picked up the phone and called her mother, recounting everything that had been going on. I didn't hold back, discussing the infidelity, the doubts that had plagued me, and my decision to leave. I have always had a strong bond with Jane's parents. Her parents said they were going to drive into town, which would take them about an hour. That was my cue to leave. Jane was still crying in the bathroom, but her tears felt insincere to me, especially after the way she had answered my questions. Before I left, I packed another bag and gathered all the items that held sentimental value for me. I found a parking lot and waited in my car until I could get in contact with a friend for a place to stay. I tried to sleep in the car but couldn't. Adrenaline coursed through my body. Jane tried to call me once her parents arrived at the apartment. When I didn't answer, she resorted to texting me. Her emotions had shifted from sadness and tears to anger and rage. According to her, I am now a worthless scumbag for revealing everything to her mother. Oops. And no, I don't regret it. Update. It's been a week since I left. Jane has sent me about 100 text messages. They vary from insulting to pleading for me to return, and even random photos of her meals for some unknown reason. I've chosen not to respond to any of them. I feel like I said everything I needed to before I left. Since we didn't have shared finances, that aspect wasn't too difficult. To be safe, I canceled any subscriptions that were linked to my credit card and updated all of my important passwords. I'm currently staying on my friend's couch until I can find a more stable living situation. In the meantime, I am also exploring short-term rental options. On top of that, I've started looking for a divorce attorney. A colleague of mine gave me a recommendation, so unless I come across something better, I will likely go with their suggestion. Update. Hey folks, I'm happy, I guess. My ex and I both signed the final papers for our divorce this week. It's hard to believe even now. About 2 weeks into the divorce proceedings, she became uncooperative. I had gone no contact with her and she ignored my lawyer's attempts at contact for a bit. However, things eventually got back on track. As for the affair, there's been a major development. Apparently, the guy Jane slept with that night had HIV and passed it on to my wife. She admitted that she wasn't using protection like she claimed at first. Looking back, I'm grateful that I didn't sleep with her that time she tried to force herself onto me. It was a tense conversation when she called with the news. She urged me to get tested. I'd already seen the doctor after her initial cheating and was given a clean bill of health. But I will have a second test done just in case. I struggled to process the news but managed to maintain composure as she explained the treatment process she was undergoing. She was starting antiretroviral therapy and had regular medical appointments scheduled. Jane also expressed hope to rekindle our relationship and possibly get back together. I said that I was sorry about her condition, but as we were now divorced, it was no longer any of my concern and I had absolutely no desire to pursue any kind of relationship with her again. She cried on the phone and told me how sorry she was for the things she did and feels immense remorse for hurting me and ruining our marriage. I feel like she's only remorseful due to the fact that she now has an incurable disease and has ruined her entire life. She knows she will struggle to find anyone else who wants to be with her, especially now that she has a transmittable disease. While I do feel sorry about her health, ultimately she brought this upon herself. Consequences and karma. Jane's actions ruined our marriage and her own life. I feel like I wasted years with someone that I didn't truly know. She was definitely not the person I thought she was, and not the woman I thought I had married. She hid everything so well over the years. I feel like when she came home that morning, she no longer cared if she got caught. Like she had just given up or couldn't be bothered hiding it anymore. But if that's the case, why lie about all the other times? Jane could have confessed the first time she cheated and saved me all those wasted years I spent on her. I started therapy and I've discussed this topic extensively with my therapist. It still pains me to think that someone I loved could have treated me with such disregard, but I'm actively trying to heal from it. Anyway, she's out of my life now and it's time for me to move on. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for investing your time in today's video. If this content resonated with you and you're eager to explore more stories of infidelity, consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and turning on notifications. I appreciate every one of you, so let's continue this journey. Until next time, take care.